She said, "I met someone here. I think he's the one." We were still sharing the same hotel room. I didn't argue, just nodded and said, "I hope you're happy." That night I quietly changed my flight and left. 3 days later, when she unlocked the apartment door, she realized something inside had changed long before she arrived. I'm 32. I work in logistics, the kind of job that runs on spreadsheets and conference calls, and a quietly suffocating sense that the days are passing faster than you're living them. I'm not dramatic by nature. I don't catastrophize. I've always been the person in the room who stays calm when things go sideways, who measures twice before saying anything, who absorbs the tension in a room the way concrete absorbs heat, slowly, invisibly, until one day the surface just cracks. That is the only context you need to understand everything that follows. My wife and I had been together for 6 years, married for 3. We met at a mutual friend's backyard dinner, and the thing I remember most about that first night isn't what she was wearing or what she said, it's the quality of her attention. She listened like she meant it, like your words mattered to her in a physical way. I had never felt that from anyone before, not in the way that makes you reach for your drink just to have something to do with your hands while you figure out how to deserve it. I fell into that attention like falling into warm water. By year 4 of the relationship, the attention had shifted. Not dramatically, not in ways you could name in a sentence. More like a tide pulling back so slowly, you only notice the shore has changed when you look up one day and realize you're standing on wet sand where there used to be waves. We had our rhythms. She had her work friends. I had mine. We had a 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs with off-white walls and a kitchen island I had spent an entire weekend installing, which she photographed for her social media and which I cleaned every Sunday morning with a specific granite cleaner I kept under the sink. Our life looked immaculate from the outside. The problem with immaculate is that it requires constant maintenance, and maintenance eventually starts to feel like performance. The trip was her idea. A long weekend at a coastal resort, the kind of place that exists in a liminal space between luxury and longing, where the sea air carries both salt and money. A wellness retreat technically. Her company had been pushing work-life balance initiatives, and a colleague had recommended it. She asked if I wanted to come. I should have been suspicious of the asking. Looking back now, I think she invited me, because not inviting me would have been a decision. Inviting me kept her options open while giving her the cover of commitment. We drove down on a Thursday. She was in good spirits, better than she'd been in months, actually. Animated in a way I had started to miss, talking fast about podcasts she'd been listening to and a documentary she wanted us to watch and a restaurant back home she thought we should try. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the reset we needed. I remember feeling grateful. The resort was beautiful in the way that expensive things are always beautiful, deliberately, effortlessly, and with an undercurrent of cruelty toward anyone who can't afford to stay. Our room had a balcony that overlooked the ocean. The bed sheets were the kind of heavy, crisp white that costs more than your average mortgage payment. There was a welcome basket with wine and dried figs and a small card that said, "Enjoy your journey together." I put the card on the nightstand. She put it in the trash. The first evening, we had dinner at the resort restaurant. She was on her phone more than usual, but I told myself it was work. She had a project wrapping up, something with a difficult stakeholder. I ordered the fish. She ordered a salad she barely touched. We talked about whether we wanted kids, not in the way couples usually discuss it. Not warmly, not with that half-nervous, half-excited energy. More like 2 people reviewing a contract, both looking for the clause that might get them out of it. That night she slept facing the wall. I stayed awake watching the ceiling fan turn, listening to the ocean outside and trying to name the feeling in my chest that was too quiet to be alarm and too persistent to be nothing. The second day, she was gone when I woke up. A note on the pillow said yoga class, back by 9. By 11, she still wasn't back. I texted. The response came 40 minutes later. Ran into someone from the wellness sessions, having breakfast. Don't wait for me. I didn't wait. I took a long shower and sat on the balcony with coffee and watched the waves and told myself this was fine. This was normal. People meet people on retreats. That is the whole point of retreats. She came back at 1 in the afternoon. Her cheeks were flushed in a way that had nothing to do with sun. She smelled faintly of someone else's cologne. Not aggressively, not obviously, just enough to register in the back of your brain as a wrong note in a familiar song. She kissed my cheek and said she was going to shower. I sat with that for a long time. That evening we went to the resort's shared social area, a kind of open lounge with low lighting, wicker furniture, and a fire pit where people gathered in that conspicuously relaxed way that expensive vacations make possible. She got a drink, I got a drink, and then across the fire pit, she made eye contact with someone, and something in her face changed. It was small, the kind of thing you would miss if you weren't watching for it. A loosening, like a door opening just a crack, before someone remembers to hold it shut. She turned back to me and smiled, and the smile was warm and real and completely for me, and somehow that made it worse. I watched him for a while. He was tall, loose in the way of men who have never been told no in the right voice. Mid-30s maybe, with the kind of easy confidence that either comes from money or from never having to work too hard for anything. He glanced at her twice in the next 20 minutes. She glanced back once. I said nothing. I never say anything right away. That is both my best quality and my deepest flaw. We went to bed. She fell asleep quickly. I lay awake until 2 in the morning. The next morning, I went down to the breakfast area and ordered food, and sat at a table near the window and watched the tide. She came down 20 minutes later, showered and bright-eyed, wearing a dress I hadn't seen before. I noticed it in the way you notice a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit, and she kissed the top of my head and asked if I'd slept okay. I said fine. She sat down. He walked in 7 minutes later. I know because I was watching the clock. She registered him without looking up from her phone. That was the tell. The deliberate not looking that is more obvious than looking. The way her posture shifted almost imperceptibly, like someone bracing for a wave they've already decided to let knock them down. He passed our table, paused, said her name. Not her full name, a nickname. Something familiar. Something earned over more than 2 days. And she looked up with that loosening again, the door opening, and said hello, and introduced me as her husband in the tone of voice you use when you're explaining a complication. He shook my hand. His grip was the kind of firm that announces itself. He said it was good to meet me. I said likewise. He moved on. 30 seconds of interaction. That was all. But the air around our table had changed in a way I cannot fully describe, except to say it felt like the moment before a storm when the birds go quiet. Not because anything has happened yet, but because something has already been decided by forces outside your control. She ate her breakfast. I ate mine. We did not talk much. It was that afternoon, while she was at a massage appointment she had booked, and I was sitting on the balcony with my laptop pretending to review work emails, that she called me, not texted, called, which she almost never does. I watched the name on my screen for 2 full rings before I picked up. "Hey," she said. Her voice was different. Careful, the way people sound when they've been rehearsing. "Hey," I said. A pause, not long, but waited. "I need to tell you something." I looked at the ocean. There were 3 sailboats on the horizon, so small they looked painted there. I remember thinking, this is the last moment before the moment. Memorize it. "Okay," I said. "I met someone here." Another pause. "I know how that sounds. I know the timing is, I know. But I think..." Her voice got softer, which made it somehow louder. "I think he might be the one." I did not speak for a long time. She filled the silence with more words. Something about how she hadn't planned it. How she had been struggling with things for a while. How she was sorry. How she didn't mean for this to happen. How she needed to be honest. The words came out fast and rehearsed and exhausted sounding, the way confessions do when someone has been holding them for too long and has finally decided release matters more than accuracy. I let her finish. Then I said, "I hope you're happy." She stopped. "What?" "I hope you're happy," I said again. "With him." She didn't know what to do with that. She had prepared for anger, for devastation, for a fight that would let her reframe herself as the one who was brave enough to be honest. She had not prepared for quiet. "Can we talk about this? Like, really talk?" "We just did," I said. "Get your massage. I'll see you later." I hung up. I sat on that balcony for another hour, watching the sailboats inch across the horizon until they disappeared. Then I opened my phone and changed my flight. I packed my bag slowly, methodically, the way I do everything. Took only what I'd brought. Left the welcome basket on the counter. Left her half of the closet space exactly as she'd arranged it. Left the room key on the nightstand next to the spot where the welcome card had been before she threw it away. Left no note. The drive to the airport was 2 hours. I stopped once for coffee at a gas station, drank it in the parking lot, watched trucks pull in and out. The sky was doing something extraordinary with the light, that late afternoon gold that turns everything briefly sacred. And I noticed it the way you notice beautiful things when you're in shock, with perfect clarity and zero feeling. I did not cry on the flight. I did not cry when I landed. I did not cry when I unlocked our apartment door and turned on the lights and stood in the kitchen looking at the granite island I had spent an entire weekend installing. I cried once, briefly, at 3 a.m, sitting on the bathroom floor with my back against the tub. Not from grief exactly. From the specific cellular pain of having loved something completely and having had that completeness mean nothing in the end. From the realization that you can do everything right and still be standing alone in a bathroom at 3 a.m, wondering which version of yourself made the wrong turn. Then I got up, washed my face, and started thinking. This is the part people don't talk about. Not the grief, but what comes after the grief when you're the kind of person who goes quiet instead of loud. The cold, systematic clarity that sets in when the emotions have done their job and stepped aside. The way your mind, suddenly uncluttered by hope, starts to see things it was too generous to see before. I spent 2 days in that apartment going through everything. Not in a paranoid way, in the way of someone reviewing data after a system failure, trying to locate the origin point. I found the texts not because I was snooping. I found them because she had left herself logged into a shared tablet we used for streaming, and the messaging app had a notification. I tapped it without thinking, and there it was. 3 weeks of conversation, time-stamped, archived. Not with the man from the resort, with someone else entirely. That was the turn I hadn't expected. The man at the resort was not the first. The man at the resort had simply been the one she decided to confess about, the one who had made her feel brave enough to say something out loud. But before him, running parallel to our last 3 months of couples dinners and Sunday kitchen cleaning and conversations about whether we wanted children, there had been someone else. Someone from her office, someone she had been texting in the way that begins innocuously and doesn't. I read everything, not quickly, slowly, the way you read something you need to understand completely before you decide what to do with it. The timestamps told a story that made the resort story look like a footnote. The language in the messages, the easiness of it, the private jokes, the specific way she texted him versus the way she texted me was its own kind of verdict. I closed the app. I sat at the kitchen island for a long time. Then I called my brother and told him I needed help moving some things into storage. She came back 3 days later. I know because I was there. She unlocked the door with that particular rhythm people have after years of coming home, the slight jiggle on the lock, the practiced nudge with the shoulder, and she walked in and stood in the doorway of the living room, and she went very still. I had not cleared the apartment. I want to be specific about that because the story gets exaggerated in the telling. I had not taken her things or moved the furniture or done anything theatrical. What I had done was remove my things quietly, deliberately, in a way that made the apartment feel like a stage set where one actor has simply stopped showing up. My books gone from the shelves, my photographs gone from the walls, my kitchen things, the good knives, the coffee equipment, the granite cleaner, gone from the cabinets. The spaces where these things had lived were clean and empty in a way that was more devastating than damage. I was sitting at the kitchen island when she came in. I had a cup of coffee. I was wearing clean clothes. I had slept. She looked at me, then at the shelves, then back at me. Her face went through several things before settling into something complicated. "When did you—" she started. 3 days ago, I said. She set her bag down slowly. "You were just here, waiting." I was packing. She walked further into the apartment, taking inventory. The bedroom, the bathroom. She came back looking like someone doing the math on a number they don't want to accept. "You're leaving," she said. Not a question. "I've been gone," I said. I was going to explain everything. There's more to this than what I said on the phone, and you just left without even... "I read the messages," I said, "on the tablet." The silence that followed was a different kind than the one on the phone. On the phone, the silence had been shock. This silence was the specific, airless quiet of someone realizing the map has been read. She sat down on the couch. "Okay," she said. "Okay," I said. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't want you to say anything," I said. "I don't need an explanation. I understand what happened. I'm not here for a conversation." "Then why are you here?" "I own half of this apartment," I said simply. "I'm here to finish packing." We did not have a long fight. She tried once. She said something about how I had been emotionally distant, how she had been lonely, how this was a symptom of something that was already broken. And I listened to all of it and waited until she was finished and said, "I'm not interested in revisionist history tonight." She went quiet after that. She knew me well enough to know that quiet in return meant the conversation was over. I finished packing. It took another 2 hours. She sat in the living room most of that time, and at one point she was on the phone talking quietly in a way that I recognized immediately. The same careful cadence as the phone call at the resort, the same practiced softness. I understood she was calling him. The other one, the one from before, looking for the comfort she had already decided she wanted before she'd even come through the door. I carried the last box to my car alone at 11 at night, under a sky that was doing nothing poetic whatsoever, just cold and flat and very dark. I drove to my brother's place, unloaded what I needed, slept on his couch in the specific exhaustion of a person who has made a decision they cannot unmake. The divorce proceedings were quiet. I made them quiet deliberately. I hired a lawyer who did not like drama and had no interest in performing one, and we moved through the process with the same kind of cold efficiency I bring to everything when I've decided the emotional phase is over. She contested nothing of significance. There was some back and forth over the apartment, which we ultimately sold, and over a joint account, which we divided. She hired a lawyer of her own who sent 3 aggressive letters before apparently being told by someone who knew me that the aggression was not going to produce results and could be dispensed with. 14 months after she said, "I think he's the one," across a phone line while I watched sailboats, we were legally finished. Here is what happened to her. She moved in with the man from the office. That lasted approximately 7 months. He was not, it turned out, someone who wanted the thing she had been looking for. The intensity of the new had burned itself out, as it does, and what remained was a regular man with regular limitations and none of the history or habits that make a long relationship navigable. She reached out to me once, 8 months after the divorce was final, through a mutual friend. The message was vague in the way of messages from people who haven't decided yet what they're asking for. I did not respond, not out of cruelty, out of the same self-preservation that made me change my flight. As for the man from the resort, I never found out what happened there. I don't think anything did. Ultimately, I think he was the catalyst, not the destination. I think she used his attention to make a decision she had already arrived at and didn't know how to execute. That is actually the most painful version of the story in some ways. Not that she fell for someone else, but that someone else was simply the permission she needed to leave something she'd already mentally left. I'm in a different city now. I have a smaller apartment that I furnished deliberately, nothing I brought from before, nothing that holds residue. The kitchen island is a simple butcher block I bought from a salvage store and sealed myself on a Sunday afternoon with the windows open and music playing and no one to photograph it for their social media. I clean it with whatever's under the sink. There is no specific product. I'm not happy exactly, but I am not pretending to be something I'm not, and there is a particular relief in that which I had not fully appreciated until I lost it the first time. Edit. A few people have asked whether I regret not fighting harder, not having the big confrontation, not demanding more of an explanation. The answer is no, and let me be precise about why. The confrontation would have been for her benefit, not mine. It would have given her the chance to be the person who was honest, the person who was brave, the person who endured the storm of my anger and came out the other side having paid some emotional tax that cleared the ledger. I denied her that, not maliciously, just practically. I didn't owe her my rage. My rage belonged to me, and I spent it privately, in ways that did not include giving her the starring role in my worst moments. Edit. Several people have also asked about the colleague, whether I said anything at work, whether there were professional consequences. I knew where he worked, but we didn't share a workplace, so there was nothing directly applicable. I'll say this. I am a person who believes consequences should be proportionate and organic rather than engineered. What I did was refuse to smooth things over, refuse to maintain shared social infrastructure, refuse to attend mutual events where pleasantries would have been required. The social cost of what she did was not something I manufactured. It was something I simply stopped preventing. Edit. The question I get most in various forms is, did you love her? Yes. Completely. Without reservation. That is not a complication in this story. That is the story. You can love someone completely and still recognize clearly and without drama that the thing you loved has ended and that staying would be a kind of slow violence against your own life. The grief and the decision can coexist. They did, in me. The granite cleaner is still under my brother's sink, actually. He uses it now. That is the least poetic detail in all of this, and for some reason it is the one I keep coming back to. The ordinary persistence of things after the story they were part of has finished. The way life continues to require maintenance, regardless of what happened last month or last year. The way you just keep buying the cleaner, the way you just keep cleaning the counter, the way the surface holds and the surface holds and the surface holds until one day, quietly, it cracks. And then you learn to live with the crack, and eventually the crack is just part of the texture, and eventually the texture is just your life, and your life is just yours again. And that is both the loss and the beginning of something you don't have a word for yet. I don't have a word for it yet, but I'm in no hurry.